Okay, so I hope everybody enjoyed their lunch, and we are pleased to have some real-life students here with us today to talk about their experience with restorative justice as peer mediators. And we also have a restorative justice facilitator, and they're going to be introducing themselves. And so this session here is just to give you an opportunity to hear directly from people who are intimately involved with the practice, as well as to, just kind of ask questions and get a little bit more information, get a little more deeper understanding about how it's working at their particular schools and how they see it transforming their experience at school, as well as their interactions and engagement with teachers and fellow students. So this session, after the individuals here introduce themselves, Louis is going to just kind of initiate and perhaps, interject some questions, but this is really a session for you all to ask questions and get the answers to them. Okay, so here we go.
So we'll start with introductions, and I'll start. I'm David Usum. I coordinate the Restorative Justice Program for the school district, Oakland Unified School District.
I'm Odalis, and I'm an 8th grader at Edna Brewer Middle School.
My name is Mishak. I'm a 7th grader at Edna Brewer.
My name is Kyle McClurkins. I'm a restorative practice facilitator at Edna Brewer Middle School.
My name is Mukta Sambrani, and I am the 7th grade assistant principal at Edna Brewer Middle School. So I'm the adult responsible for taking credit for everything fantastic Mishak. That's cool. That's the one. Yes. He's mine.
Okay. David, I wonder if you could just, before we jump in, put the work at Edna Brewer into the context of the district.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what is happening in Oakland? How extensive is restorative justice?
Mm-hmm.
How are you actually implementing this district-wide? And we can zero
Okay.
in.
All right, I'll try and do that briefly.
Yeah.
Restorative justice is something we've been implementing since about 2006 here at Oakland Unified School District, starting with one school in West Oakland, a middle school called Cole Middle School, and it was very successful at that middle school. And as a result of the decrease in suspensions and the fighting and the disciplinary hearing panels, the expulsion process, the number of referrals dropping, the school district passed a resolution making restorative justice the model for discipline and with an intentional move away from zero tolerance policies of discipline. And that was in 2010 that the school board passed that resolution. And so since then, in 2011, I was hired as a program manager, and we were able to create a model and then train and coach people on that model. And we started off around then, we probably had about 5 or 7 schools in various stages of implementing whole school restorative justice. And whole school restorative justice are the 3 tiers that I mentioned earlier: community building, repairing harm, and individualized support for students. And so fast forward to this year, where we have about 36 schools implementing whole school restorative justice, and we've received funding from the superintendent. It's the first time the school district has actually given us money to do this work, to hire staff, and we are now at almost every middle school and almost every high school. And we have staff people like Kyle, restorative justice facilitators, who are responsible for helping the school implement restorative justice. And he's not there to do it for the school. He's not the firefighter for the school. He is there to support the whole school in owning this as a culture shift, as a paradigm shift. And so his job is working with students and staff and parents, and I'll let him explain a little bit more about that to you. But Edna Brewer Middle School is just one of a lot of schools within the district. Edna Brewer happens to be further along than a lot of schools because it had a pretty well-functioning peer restorative justice program, which really helped drive the whole school restorative justice program. And they also have a lot of adults that have bought into the culture shift too, including Mukta, the assistant principal for the 7th grade. So I just want to make that brief so we have time for the students.
Well, so we just jump do want to hear from everybody, of course, and get questions, but Kyle, do you want to just tell us what you do and how this is working at Edna Brewer?
Sure.
And maybe just quickly how you got there. I see you worked at, you were on Brothers on the Rise.
I was.
Conflict mediator. And how did that work relate to what you're doing now?
So just as a conflict mediator, it helped me at Brewer because I started a peer mediation program. So I trained students to deal with conflicts at the school. And I did that for a couple of years. And then I heard about the restorative justice process, and I decided to go through a 5-day training. And I was like, wow, this is similar but a little bit different, and it goes a little bit deeper as far as the people affected whenever there is harm. But when you're a mediator, you don't work on community building. You're just trying to deal with the issue and get to the bottom of it. But what I saw firsthand with restorative justice was you build community, trust, and relationships, and I really liked that aspect. And then as we got into the dealing with conflict and harm, since I already was a mediator, it just kind of just worked out perfectly. And so that's how my role has transitioned. And, this is my passion. I've done lots of years in different jobs, and, I'm really happy with what I do, and I plan on staying in this field for a long time.
So what do you do at Edna Brewer?
So what do I do at Edna Brewer? I build community. I build relationships. My main goal is to get the student buy-in so that they can get the adults to buy in. And what I do, because students are so much easier to work with, and so basically what I do is I look for students who have great leadership skills. It does not matter your socioeconomic background, your ethnicity, your grades. I look for all students, because if I get all the great students, or the so-called great students, they might not know everyone or everything, and they're in a certain level where they don't communicate with other students. So what I do is I look for all students, and I get to know them by coming to their classrooms or just seeing them on the yard during lunch, and just having a good time with them. I may play games with them. We just have good conversations about any and everything. There are no holds barred with me. And from there, when I find those students, I open up positions for them to be trained in restorative justice with community building skills, and then we transition into dealing with conflict and harm. And once they've been trained, then they go into the classrooms, and these two, for instance, they run community building circles with their peers. So they'll be like, Mr. Kyle, I want to run a community building circle today for a half hour. I said, okay, here's a whiteboard. What do you want to do? And then we plan it. It may take 2 to 3 days. We plan it, we practice it, and then we run it. And from that way it shows that the teachers that they have great leadership skills, but also shows their peers like, wow, we can actually teach the class for the day and do what we want to do as long as we're building community and trust. And from there, if there's anything as far as harm and conflict, then I talk to the students about what's going on, what's going on at the school, what they've heard, and then they get to talk to the students one-to-one about what's going on, and then they come to me, and then we plan how we're going to resolve the conflict, who needs to be in the circle, whether it's teachers or students, family members, and from there, they lead the circle. I'm there as support, or maybe to ask some clarifying questions, but they ask all of the questions. They deal with a lot, and they hold it all in at the end of the day. Like, they don't go around and tell everybody, oh, guess what happened? You should have been there, because girl or boy, whatever. They honor privacy very well. And we talk about it amongst ourselves, so we keep it in our own personal circle, but just so they have someone to vent to. So I'm that person who they can talk to about any and everything once they've dealt with conflicts and whatnot.
Well, okay, Meshach and Isidore. Odalise. I know we would love to be in one of these circles with you, but could you just tell us the kinds of issues that you deal with in the circles?
There are a lot of different things, mostly drama, cyberbullying, rumors, different things, not just with, your peers, but there are also things with your teachers. and adults. So, yeah.
I also think like it could be just with yourself, like how you feel, like are you feeling depressed, if you have anxiety, like do you question your gender, and like you can talk about it with us because like we won't tell anybody.
So what made you decide that you wanted to kind of be part of this work?
Well, I started doing this in 5th grade in my old school, in my elementary school. It's always been a part of me that I wanted to help. And once I got to middle school, I thought that there was a program, not just, and I really wanted to help anyone in any ways that I could so I could make them feel better. And that's why I started this.
What made me want to do this was in 4th grade there was this program called Mosaic, where like there you go to a camp for like 5 days and like you get to know people from other schools and different type of people, and it really opened up because like we start out with something fun, then we get into something like a little deeper because there was this game where like cross the line if something happened, like cross the line if you ever peed your pants or something, and then it would start getting deeper and deeper and deeper. And then when I got into 6th grade, I saw that there was an opportunity, and I wanted to try because a lot of people kept on saying I was nice, empathetic, and just saying that I would like to listen to people. So I tried out, and then I made it.
Okay, we're going to open up to questions very soon, but I wanted to hear from Mukta Sambrani. How do you see this playing itself out? And I also couldn't help noticing on your resume that you are involved with Facing History and Ourselves, which is a very powerful program that deals with a lot of these issues too. And how does that fit into the work you're doing here?
So I was a high school
And
teacher.
Mukta you're the assistant
I'm the assistant principal
principal.
for the 7th grade.
for the 7th grade.
I was a high school teacher here in Oakland in small schools, and we were not formally using restorative approaches at the 2 high schools where I taught, but we worked with a lot of partner organizations. So that was my first introduction to RJ, and I became a Holocaust educator with Facing History. And what was of interest to me in that work was teaching tolerance, was teaching young people how to treat each other, not as an extension of teaching genocide and teaching Holocaust. And so in the year 2008, one of my students was killed by the police here in Oakland. And that was like a life-changing event for me. And it clarified to me that the work needed to happen in middle school. That if we don't meet the needs of students in middle school, then sometimes it's too late to have that conversation by the time they're sophomores and juniors. So that sent me to an administrative credential program, and I chose this work. When I got to Edna Brewer, I was like, that's fantastic. I get to do RJ work. This is what I want to do. So I was fortunate enough that I was hired in the summer, and I went to an RJ training and a National Equity Project training even before I got my office at Edna Brewer Middle School. And I think that prepared me. And additionally, I was in a leadership program, which was a very tiny program here, but I was coached by Dennis Chaconis, who's the former superintendent of OUSD. And my master's thesis was on the teacher-student relationship. So working at Edna Brewer Middle School with Mr. Kyle, who's the master of relationships, and then bringing that work into instruction was my first step at Edna Brewer, as in how do we encourage teachers and cultivate a classroom atmosphere through teacher coaching that's conducive to RJ work, because the teacher-student relationship determines the student's relationship to themselves, to the subject area, and to their prospects of being a lifelong learner. So that was what solidified my commitment to Brewer, because I got to do that work once I got there. And the kids are truly tremendous. They are offers teachers, and they teach me everything I know. So all of the influences facing history and ourselves, my experience as a high school teacher in small schools, culminated in this work through the RJ training that I received, thanks to David Yusuf.
So let me just ask you then, open it up, in terms of the impact on the school, have suspensions and expulsion rates gone down? Have you, how is that looking?
So we had a dramatic drop in our suspension rates in the last 2 years. That's the previous 2 years. So I looped 7th and 8th grade. And in those 2 years, there's a big drop in suspensions, partly because once we got to know that 7th grade group, when they cycled through to the 8th grade, the relationships were in place, and we had the smallest number of suspensions then. I'm in a 7 loop at this time, and my kids will be in 8th grade next year. So my understanding of how the suspensions go down is based on the relational work that administrators are able to do powerfully with the young people. At this time, we have more suspensions than we did last year, but they have to do with infractions that cannot be tolerated on a school campus. So we have a few suspensions at this time, and I've spoken to David about this. I was a little nervous, like, oh my God, we have suspensions. And David clarified to me that it is a tool. It is a tool. But what we do after the suspension is most important, as in, how do we help the student to re-enter the community or have a different conversation with them about what's not negotiable about our school community, and therefore we want you to come in this way when you return from an absence from the community. So I think it's the relationship.
Okay, well, let's open it up. You willing to take any questions on any level, right?
Yes.
So,
Absolutely.
okay. Yeah. And why don't you say who you are?
My name is Nina Mancini. I work in San Juan Unified School District in Sacramento. And my question is for you. Mr. Kyle mentioned that you came to him and said you want to do a community circle. So what was going on at your school site that made you feel like you needed to have a community circle?
Is this for
Mishak.
Mishak? Mishak.
What made us think about it was because, like, when I entered the 6th grade, like, you had, like, the people who you went to school with. So, like, if you went, like, to, say, to Glenview, you would hang out with all the Glenview kids. Like, if you went to Bella Vista, you would hang out with the Bella Vista kids. And then, so, like, we never really got to know each other unless you guys had, like, very different schools, like, and to the point where, like, nobody went to your school, so you had to make friends. So, like, we wanted to, like, spread, because, like for 7th and 8th grade, you're going to have the same teachers and probably the same students you're going to work with. So it's like you got to know the students because problems can rise up because, like, you can, assume something by, like, how they look or what their color or something like that.
Thank you.
And do you want to answer that question too?
Sure.
Yeah.
Like Mishak said, we wanted to do community circles because just to let the students know that there are different people in their grade that they can trust and that they can get to know each other. So, make new friends and get to know each other more and just to feel safe around different people.
Okay.
First, I want to say
I'm
Heather Collins. I'm with UMinn Charter School, the counselor there. I want to just say that I'm so impressed with how courageous you are to come here and share with us your experiences. And obviously, you're a huge asset to your school community. I'm wondering if you lead some of these groups with kids who are the same age as you, or if you're always targeting somebody a little bit younger.
I think like you would, like I would do like 7th grade and sometimes 6th because like that's in my age range, and like I actually know some of the people and like some of the experience on like 8th grade where like it's their last year and they're frantic of what high school they're gonna go to.
Mm-hmm. Well, because I'm just wondering if you ever have peers question your authority or how it impacts you socially to be in sort of this special status.
Well, I think that some people do that, but it's not like all of the time. It's very rare. And like people don't think like we're special because like we get to hear out on all of the problems, because like we can't tell people about it like, oh look, he did this and I saw everything. So it's like it's kind of like the same thing, like we get like to listen to the stories but we can't share it out, so it's like it just stays like till you listen to the stories and that's it.
Kyle, how many people applied to be peer RJ leader?
This year I had 75 applicants. Could only take, I was only supposed to take 20, but I kind of opened it up a little bit and I made it more, I geared it more towards 6th grade this year. Normally I like have a lot of strong 7th and 8th grade leaders. Last year I had 90 and I took 30. I had an after school class, so I took about 36. So yeah, I always have a really large number that apply, and it's really hard to weed out the people who you really want. So I always have like an interview process. So like I don't dress like this every day. I'm using a t-shirt and jeans, and I have some tennis shoes on. I look like the students. But what I do is that they have to dress up like I have to dress up. So if I'm dressing up, you're dressing up. It's an interview. They sit on a panel from anywhere from 3 to 10 people. And Ms. Sombrani was a part of it. David's been a part of it. I have parents come in, I have other students, and they interview. They just throw all kinds of questions at them just to see how they can react. But I want them to be comfortable being uncomfortable, because that's what RJ is, right? You know, you have to be, you sit in a circle, you're facing each other. You're open. There's no table in front of you. It's just, here I am. So accept me for who I am. So they definitely had to go through a long interview process, and they had to turn in applications. They had to get teacher permission to miss class because they were going through the 20-minute interview. They had to, what else? Teacher interview,
After that, like since it was a full-day training, that you had to get all of the teachers you were missed to sign it, and your parents decided knowing that you're going to miss class for the PRRJ training.
Right, yeah, 2 days. 2 days with me from about 8:30 until 3 o'clock. They missed school, and they had to make the work up. They weren't excused. They were excused to miss class, but they still had to get their homework. Anything else you want to tell, Elise?
Do you guys get credit or any? Was it a totally volunteer?
I think sometimes it's credit, but most of the time it's volunteer.
So there are field trips. One field trip we're working on is going to Center Force Youth Court, which is a youth-run court with real cases, and the students are actually peer jurors on these real cases, and so that's part of their community works that they need to do with me. They have to lead at least 2 or 3 class circles. I mean, we go to Cal games, we do other field trips and whatnot. They're going to actually be a part of the Peer Resource Conference on March 17th at UC Berkeley. And they're going to lead their peers from, I think it's about 20 middle schools, I think, from Oakland. They're going to come, they're going to lead an hour, 10-minute long workshop. So we're prepping for a lot. They come up with the ideas, and I just make sure that they put it in order and that they can produce what they come up with.
And we have a bridge to Crocker Highlands that's starting. So this is brand new work. Crocker Highlands is an elementary school in our neighborhood, and they reached out to us to build a social justice and restorative justice bridge with our school. So our peer leaders will be leading community circles at an elementary school to introduce them to our school culture if they choose to come to our school, but to also introduce them to restorative justice. So that's brand new, starting this year.
for anyone, but you mentioned earlier that your suspension rate went up, but
Yeah.
one of the things we were debriefing at lunchtime is the power of supporting young people when they
Yes.
come back. That was the
That's
video
right.
we kind of saw.
Re-entry.
Just wanted to know, like, how often do you do that? And have you seen that have an impact? 'Cause I know there's certain things that you just have to suspend kids, but the power of like doing that when they come back, do you see that particular child decrease the amount of times they get suspended afterwards? Is it a powerful tool?
I could speak to in-school suspension-related conference I had yesterday. So my approach is always to meet with the student's family as a pre-suspension conference, and then post-suspension meet the whole family again if I can, to do both, right? So when the entire family comes together and circles up with a student, and we all say, myself included, that I want something different for you, and what's happening is not acceptable, and we had agreements, and you've had 2 opportunities, and you've broken the agreement a 3rd time, so this time we have to use assertive discipline. So we definitely use a matrix, and then we also use like the family dialogue model, at both ends of the suspension as far as possible. I know my 8th grade colleague, Mr. Rock, has been doing more of the re-entry conferences where the entire group of teachers in that teacher family sits with a young person, and then they revisit their commitment to that young person and their commitment to embracing them back into the community. I haven't had an out-of-school suspension in my grade, but my colleague has. And I've had one which was slightly different. It was in a counseling enriched program, so it doesn't always follow the same protocol, procedure, or matrix that we do for general education students. When a student in the counseling enriched program gets physically violent or causes harm to themselves, then it's a therapeutic measure. So I've had one of those in the 7th grade this year. But again, we circled up with the student's care providers, his social worker, his grandparent, and a police officer who was responding to the emergency. It was like almost a 50-on-50 type situation. But he sat down with us and he went through the pre-suspension and post-suspension conference. And post-suspension, this police officer came back to visit the student on his birthday and brought pizza for the whole class. So the power of relationship again. He's a police officer with the Oakland Schools Police, and they're also trained on RJ. So when we do call them when there's like a very escalated situation, they usually sit with us. They don't respond like with a authoritarian stance, but with a community stance.
We currently have a partnership with Oakland Unified Police. We have our own police force in Oakland Unified, and we're partnering with them in Outward Bound Peace Building and Oakland High School, their student RJ program. And we are going to be doing a day in on a Saturday, I think in April, where the OUSD police and these OUSD Oakland High students are going to come together to spend a day building relationships and breaking down the barriers between the OUSD police and the students. And that takes a lot of prep with the police, it takes a lot of prep with the students, and with our RJ facilitators. Kyle just last week spent a day with the Outward Bound facilitators, training them in restorative justice. And then next week they will be working with our RJ facilitators on a day up in the park, training us on their sort of community building model, and then prep with the police, prep with the students, and then eventually we'll all come together to have this day. So that's a good example, I think, of partnering with a community-based organization and also working to break down the barriers that exist between the police and the community, and also deal with the trauma that go both ways with the police and the students. So.
Yes.
You guys have
Nicole.
mentioned it. Yeah, I'm sorry. My name is Nicole Stewart. I'm with Milpitas Unified School District. You've mentioned the class time piece, so I just wanted to get a sense of like how much class time do kids miss, and then once you have them trained, is it do you do most of the connection after school, or are there breaks within the day, and how does that work?
How much last time do you all miss?
How much last time?
So
training?
Just in general.
so like if there was like a conflict, like it would probably take 30 minutes. It just depends on what the conflict is. If it's like a small thing, like somebody's messing with them, it could probably take up like
Somebody's
the 10.
what? Somebody's what?
Somebody is messing with them.
Okay.
It could take up like to probably 10, 20 minutes, but it's like something like I got in a fight, somebody jumped me, somebody is making stereotypes about me. It could take up like 30 minutes to an hour.
Yeah, it always depends on the conflict. It also depends on on the people that are in the conflict. You know, if they're not being, honest, then it might take a bit longer. But it always depends on the people and the conflict.
So I try to not pull the students out of their core classes, but there are students who I know will and can make up the work. So I will, if I need to, I may pull them out halfway through, as long as I have the teacher's permission. And it could take anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour, like they said. I try and make sure it's at least 30 minutes, just so we don't make it real quick and rush, like a quick Band-Aid fix. Like we really want to get to the root of the problem. And when they're planning their facilitation out, like we have steps, like they have to go over their values and their guidelines, which you all went over earlier. They have to go over, they have to do their check-in question, and then they start getting deeper and deeper, and then there has to be agreements. What can they live with at the end of the day? So those things are always gone over. So
Just very concretely, how does it work? So there's a conflict, and then who would be in that circle? How would it actually work?
So there's a conflict, and I will find the parties who were in the conflict, but I'll definitely ask my youth leaders, like, yo, did you see this? Or did you hear about it? And I ask them, like, what did they hear and what did they see? And then I go and find the two main people who were in the conflict. And if there's more, I may grab one or two people, like as witnesses or just as support. And from there, then we, just the 2 to 4 peer leaders will get together, we'll talk about what happened, and then they decide on how they're going to go over their check-in question, how they're going to get the values out and go over the guidelines, who's going to restate, which is so key, because if you think you heard the problem and you're like, oh, la, 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 and you totally didn't hear the problem, then that can make the situation worse. So they're definitely like restating, like, this is what happened, this is what I heard you say, are we clear? And so that way the people understand, the disputants understand, like, hey, they're actually listening, they got the issue, they know what's going on. And then from there, more questions come out, and then we work on how are we going to move forward from this and agreements. And then I document it, and I pass it to Ms. Sombrani, or I pass it to whoever the other principal or assistant principal is, so they can document it. And our job is done, and then we debrief, so that they can tell me like what went well with their circle, what do they need to improve on, if they have any questions, what was hard about it, things like that. So with every circle, there's always a debrief. And then I can let them know what I saw and what I feel that they can work on for next time. But I don't really have to say too much. Like they know their stuff.
I have a question for the two students. Can you give an example of one of the more challenging, not necessarily like the harm or the conflict, but like as you were facilitating the circle, what was a challenge you experienced in your own facilitation, and how did you handle it?
Well, if we're doing a community building
Speak
circle,
up just a little bit, because
if we're doing a community building circle, then a challenge sometimes might be, you get stuck on, there are certain students that will question your authority, and and sometimes that's challenging, but that's why sometimes Mr. Kyle lets us pick our partner, and so we have help. So that's how we we go through. And then for a harm circle, one of the more challenging things, more challenging circle is drama, because you don't really have evidence. It's more more based on talking, and you don't have. Sometimes there might be witnesses that hear everything, but most of the time it's just between two people, and there's you don't really have visual evidence. Well, we usually go through our guidelines, and we try to get them to be honest with us, and we tell them that we're not going to tell anyone, because we're not. So they'll be honest with us most of the times.
Like another problem is like if you're dealing with rumors, and then like you're trying to hear the story out, like, and then like you say like the person who was in the conflict says like, and then they said that I kissed this person, and then they were like, oh no, I didn't say that, and then they start getting aggressive. So what I do is I try to be patient but assertive, like, so I don't sound like too sensitive, like, please stop, but like, stop, like, can you please stop? And then like I'll like be patient, because it may take time to die down and for them to be quiet.
And just to clarify, there's an adult in the room, or this is, you will be there?
I'm usually there, depending on what the situation is. There's usually 2 or 3 conflicts going on at one time, but I'm always there. And I ask them, I'm like, do you feel comfortable running this on your own, or would you like me to stay? And I'll stay for the beginning part, and then I might be outside the door, and I may be having my own circle in the next room next door, so I can peek my head in and see what's going on, and just go from there. But I'm never like too far away to like go between people. I'm always right there in the vicinity of the area.
Okay. Could you just
Jennifer Hastings, I'm from Alameda Unified. So this is a question for, and if you can answer, it's a two-parter though. So we talk about how when you deal with conflict and how you deal with bring people together at that point. How much of the program actually also works on prevention? So that's one part of my question. And then I'd love to hear the students talk about how they feel their work has helped the climate or culture, like whether you see benefits beyond the program in your school. So.
I can speak a little bit to it. And I was also going to speak about social emotional learning. And so social emotional learning is the bridge between the restorative justice work and the Common Core work that we're asking young people to do. And so this year, we spent 2 weeks doing community building curriculum right at the beginning of the school year. And it was held by all the teachers. So the 7th grade teachers got together, and they decided that the values that they want to focus on for the 7th grade are resilience or grit, respect, responsibility. The school values are positivity, respect, independence, determination, and empathy, but they came up with 4 themes that are around social justice, and 7th graders do find themselves wanting justice and everything, right? Things have to be fair in 7th grade. So 7th grade is for social justice, is our theme for the school year. And so for 2 weeks, we taught these lessons, and the math teachers taught lessons on grit, because resilience or grit is what students need to persevere when they're doing the Common Core math work and to apply themselves. So the teachers picked the theme that they are going to most need, and the theme that's going to run through the school year to do these culture and climate lessons. So that was powerful for us. Our advisory program also does a lot of the community building. And at this time, our advisory program is 50% academic advising and 50% community building circles. From time to time, we have a social emotional learning lesson. We recently had a series of lessons on healthy boundaries, because there's a lot of he touched me, she touched me, push, pull that leads to conflict, or I don't want you to touch me, give me my personal space. that's the type of conflict that comes across my desk. So we did these lessons on healthy boundaries. Mr. Kyle is the co-author of some of this curriculum that came to us from Alameda County Behavioral Health Services. And so we did that school-wide. So we do two things. One is we intentionally build community, and two, we are responsive to the themes that are present in the specific grade levels through the grade level administrators and the grade level RJ leads. Mr. Gibson, who is Mr. Kyle's colleague, is my partner in the 7th grade, but I also lean on Mr. Kyle. So we have an administrator and an RJ lead for each grade level. And so the two of us know the 270 kids in our band very, very well. So it's almost like I'm busy, go to Mr. Gibson, or Mr. Gibson's busy, come back to my office, and we share them. And that also really, really helps to have a partnership between an RJ team member and an administrator. So we do both community building preventative work and responsive work in response to themes that emerge, and intentional SEL work. I'll pass it this way.
What do you think the preventative is? What do y'all think?
I think that it is like at the end of the session, like you make, like you say, like, I'm sorry I did this, like you don't start out with, you did this. It's like, so you don't come off aggressive. It's like, I'm sorry I did this, and what I think you did is this, and if you can, please stop doing this, and then like the other person will do that, and then last year you had to do this contract where you like write on a piece of paper like what you did wrong and how you will prevent it, and then both of you guys would write a signature.
What do you think is preventative things, you know, from avoiding conflicts at school?
What it's helped with?
Like what helps from getting what helps from conflicts occurring at school?
What helps
Like what do we do? Let's prevent to keep conflicts from occurring.
from?
From starting.
Well, I feel like we try to make them feel like they have someone to talk to, so they're not always, they don't feel like they don't have anyone to go to and that they're stuck. So I feel like that's one of the things that we try to do so they won't, yeah.
So do they come to you before they have a conflict? Is that part of, or that's why I was wondering, do they come?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I can speak a little bit to it, can I? Sometimes before a parent calls me and says, this happened with my child yesterday. And then I turn to Mr. Gibson or Mr. Kyle, and they already know because they've already had a conversation. So before it becomes a discipline thing, it's already been spoken about by the peer RJ mediators. It's in the RJ world already. And then it comes to my desk. If it's not resolvable, if we can't make commitments and agreements, then it goes to maybe we need assertive discipline. So often Mr. Kyle's ear to the ground is so profound that mom doesn't have to call me. He already knows. And by the time I get to him, he's like, I know. Okay.
So I think the one main thing, so I'll just to close on that comment, or that question, every school should have, every child should have at least one trusted adult at the school, whether it be a teacher, support staff, cafeteria person, SSOs, like security, a parent, someone on campus that they can go to talk to. And with that, the community building aspect of it in the classrooms, like we spent the first 2 weeks at school just getting to know who each other are, but that prevents the conflicts from occurring. What Mishak was saying, like, well, we went to this school, so we only hang out with these people from this school. But in the classroom, it's just integrated with all different schools, people from different schools. So you have to know how to talk, navigate with all the different students. So you want to have games, just different activities where everybody can mingle but coexist in the same place.
I have a question for the two students. Hi, my name is Carrie. I'm a school counselor at Acacia Elementary Charter School in Stockton. First of all, thank you for being here today and allowing us to sit back and be with students. You guys are actually very good teachers on this subject, so thank you for that. My question is, how has being an RJ leader kind of affected you, and how do you think it's going to prepare you when you go into high school and decide what you want to do as a career?
Well, since I'm already in my last year of middle school, it's helped me in a lot of ways. It's helped me in, not only social skills. It made me not, just because we're in restorative justice doesn't mean that we're, better than others. It made me, like, I don't know how to explain this. It made me, feel like just because I'm in a certain position, doesn't mean that I can be better than other people, that I'm still human and I'm still just like others. And thinking about, the careers, it makes me think that I want to be, studying psychology or being a therapist and helping other people in a good way.
What I think it helps me by, because nobody's perfect. I like to watch MLG too much. Some people think I talk too much, and some people think I'm too silent. But it makes me realize that people are imperfect, and you can't judge them. Like my brother, for instance, he is really annoying. So I can say shut up and be quiet, but that really wouldn't make a change because he is probably going to stay annoying. And I would probably, how it affects my career changes is I actually know something about this. If there's many options, I'd probably be a therapist or somebody who helps out with people who if you're an astronaut and they need somebody to talk to, I'd probably be that person.
Wow.
I would say for me, it helps me every day. So I have a son who's in high school, and I have a daughter who is soon to be in middle school. So me doing what I do, I know how to talk to my children, and talking to them about my problems with my children at home, they help me out. So it's this is what I'm dealing with this morning. What do you think I should do? And then Odalise might be well, you probably should apologize because you shouldn't say it like that. And then Meshach may give me some insightful wisdom as far as well, next time try this, but they're only so old, Mr. Kyle, or this age. Oh my God. So for me, it helps me just be a better father to my children, and I learn a lot from the youth every day.
I thought they were going to say they wanted to be a Supreme Court justice.
Just a life coach to astronauts. Like that.
Do we have time for
Well, David has to leave at 1:45, so we're going to try to get a couple more questions. I think David, ideally we would have gotten in the circle and gone around, but we don't have time, so we're really compressing this. But I did want to just, maybe in terms of the few questions we have, is to kind of maybe, are there any issues that you are dealing with in your own school that you want to get feedback on, or that these folks could be helpful to you? But
first of all, I didn't tell you my name earlier.
Sorry.
Jenny Hicks from Partnership for Children in
Yeah.
Kindergarten.
Yeah, so, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, the question was kind of on the previous,
Okay.
the new talking point. But I wanted to ask, I'm David Naranjo, and I'm with Mariposa County Unified School District. I want to ask all the panel members, from your perspective, how do you encourage participation in RJ process for those who are resistant to it?
I don't think we've seen resistance.
You have.
We have not seen resistance. In fact, our adults always want to sign up for all the workshops that are offered, and it's very hard to get as many subs as I possibly can for a day, and everybody's going to an RJ training. So I think it's well supported by our adult community. The piece that some of our adults might struggle with is a sense of closure for the adult. after an infraction. And this year, our instructional leadership team is beginning to look at what are the measures for adult well-being that we have in place to support teachers and staff members after there has been an infraction in their classroom or their space, and they are embracing the student, but somehow the harm that was done has to be addressed in the context of the classroom. As in, this is a sacred space, this is my classroom, and yes, I accept you, and you're welcome back in this space with these agreements. But that has to be authentic and from the heart, and that's some of the work that we need to do. So people are very bought in, but we are still exploring tools for adults to make the re-entry feel authentic on the adult side, because sometimes adults feel wronged. One other thing that we do is our coordination of services team and our RJ team work hand in glove in that they can't exactly share student data, but they work in each other's spaces from time to time. So our cost coordinator spends time from time to time in the detention area and picks the brain of our RJ leaders and shares information informally with them so that we are able to support the whole child. And so our adults come together in that way.
I would say like just another buy-in is just if a student is having difficulty with one of their teachers, just to have that student confront the teacher, just like with me in the room, of course, just to be like, hey, like this is what I'm doing wrong. I'm coming to you with accountability as a student. I'm telling you what I'm doing wrong because I know I'm doing this wrong, but this is why I'm doing it, And then it's like, man, I've been working with this kid for like a year. He or she has never talked to me before. Like, I didn't know I was doing this. So that's one way of starting a new relationship or making a relationship better. That's one way I get the staff buy-in. Some staff is like, I'm not for this kumbaya stuff. Okay, I got you. I'm not going to force you to do it. But if everybody else is doing it, eventually you're going to either jump on board or you're going to be the person sitting on the outskirts. So.
I just want to say what's going around right now is our implementation guide, which we just created. It's hot off the presses, and it's a sort of a navigational tool for RJ facilitators and RJ teams or culture and climate teams at school sites. It's not a curriculum. It is and it's not a blueprint. It's just like a navigational tool. I wouldn't even say it's a linear document. That's why we call it stepping stones, and it's in a circle. So hopefully it'll be helpful. We don't really have time to go over it right now, but look through it, and I would say step one would be to, if you are inspired to bring RJ in a more robust way to your school district, or to even just bring it to your school district, to your school, would be to get some training in it, and then try to implement it. And some of the tools in this guide I think should be helpful for you. Please don't go back and try and do it without getting trained, because RJ is not just sitting in a circle. It's a process and a flow.
Yeah. David, do you need to duck out?
Well, can we take a couple more questions?
A couple more questions. Okay, who hasn't asked a question?
This guy right here had his hand up.
Yeah.
How are you bridging to, you mentioned elementary and then bridging to high schools, because the students will go to different high schools and just those relationships. I mean, this is such a powerful relationship that's been formed. Is there a way in which you're kind of bridging to the different spaces to be supportive of and helping, and even the students, do they have an opportunity at the high school level to then do that same work at the high school, I guess? Does that make sense, like that bridge there between?
So you're saying, is there, at the high schools that, for example, Mishak and Odalise are going to go to, is there RJ there that they can get involved in?
Yeah, and so to keep that support, because you develop these trusts, these spaces, and then to then take that away would be, it seemed like and so dramatic. So how do you continue that on to the next space?
Well, we predominantly started in middle schools in Oakland with RJ, very much as a sort of a crisis response, sort of an intervention. And so it kind of spread from middle school. So just this year really was the first time we're really getting into high schools in a larger way. We've been in other high schools before, but this is the first year we've really placed RJ facilitators at high schools that are identifying youth that have come up from middle schools. So a lot of them will ask, you know, the sixth grade, the ninth grade class, like, how many of you know what RJ is, like during like the Summer Institute or something, or the Summer Bridge Learning, and many of them will raise their hand because they participated in middle schools. And so, but the high school RJ program is not as it's not as robust as the middle school program, and we're just starting with an elementary cohort now. But the idea would be that this is a process and a philosophy that we give to the students. It's theirs, and they can take it with them into high school, and it's up to the adults at that school to allow them the space and time to practice it and use it.
So before there was adequate funding, I was like split between two middle schools and a high school. So 2009, I would say those students have gone on and graduated, but there's little brothers and sisters have come to at least school I've been at. So from there, like, my name has gone around enough to know that, oh, do you know who Mr. Kyle is? And they're like, yeah, I know Mr. Kyle. Oh, well, he worked with my brother and my sister. And so, like, from there, I've gone to different middle schools, and they're like, are you Mr. Kyle? I'm like, yeah, who are you? And they're like, oh, my cousin goes to this school, and they talk about you and this and that. So, and do you have a program like that? Or is there something I can do over the summertime where there's a RJ program? So the word of mouth, since I don't do social media, the word of mouth travels just as fast. And it's more of a relationship, you know. So I like to see how things have grown from the different schools I'm at, and my primary school now, Brewer, and how they branch off. So with Oakland High, what David was talking about earlier with Outward Bound, the students who are going to be working with the Oakland School Police, they're my former students. So it's like, okay, so I've seen what can happen and how they've grown, and they're still continuing the journey. So I've planted a seed. And what is it? It's blossoming. It's blooming.
And there's another thing that we do. The 8th grade leader usually does a handoff of students to the high school. So the 8th grade leader is usually an assistant principal. I will be that next year as my kids loop up with me. I will be in contact with the AP at the other end, and our counseling team does the same. And so we do a handoff of students who are exceptional in different ways, who can either lead or who need a little more support. So that's in place.
Kyle talked about planting a seed. I think you've planted some seeds here this afternoon. I just wanted to thank the panel for their for first coming today, but mostly for their extraordinary work that they're doing with kids in Oakland. So can we give them a round of applause? And David, thank you for hosting this. And Anita, do you want to we'll let David and the panelists go, but Anita, you have some things to say.
Okay.
No, I think we're done.
Okay,
I
okay,
think
good.
it's
All right. All right. Well, thank you once again, David, and all of your colleagues, children, Kyle. And just before we wrap up, we've distributed some information. Also want to thank David for sharing that implementation booklet, and I'm sure you'll find it very useful. And this convening, this work that we're doing with the Educators Network for Effective School Discipline is supported by the California Endowment, which also supports Oakland Unified and its work around restorative discipline practices. And we've distributed an evaluation form, and I'd really appreciate if you guys would complete that before you leave and just give us some feedback about what you thought of today's program, but also what you think how EdSource might be able to support this work going forward in terms of providing resources, doing more convenings, whether it's virtual or in person. And I know that many of you came from a good distance away, and appreciate your going all over the hills, valleys, and dales to get here. And so there is an expense form, and if you would complete that and leave that with us, or if you want to get out of here and try to get ahead of some of that traffic, you can take it and email that back to us. I think it's just been a really fabulous day. I've been really pleased with the turnout, with the conversation, with the information that was shared. We have an opportunity to continue this conversation as a group. We have our Educators Network. We invite you to, there's information on the evaluation forum about how you can tap into some of the resources and some of the other educators who are deeply engaged in this work. So we invite you to join that community. And also take a look at EdSource and some of our coverage. Jane Adams, who is one of our staff writers who does a lot of reporting around student health and wellness, has written quite a few articles about suspensions and expulsions, as well as Sue Fry, who is here with us as well. And if you're on Twitter, we'd love for you to follow us. Tiffany's been doing quite a bit of tweeting in the back there, so there's a whole stream of information that you can just kind of go back and refer to if you just look for the hashtag handle school discipline EdSource today. And I think that's it.
Feel free to take your value with you. Maybe put it in your bag, and so next time you open up your bag, be like, oh yeah, it's my value.
If you send us the presentation
Yeah.
as a PDF,
Yes.
I can send it out.
Yeah, I will.
And also, there was a question about whether that video was available.
The video is on our website. It's www.ousd.org/restorative-justice, and that, along with other videos, is right there.
If we wanted more training for staff to be facilitators, what do you recommend?
We can't do it because we just are having trouble training the amount of people that need to be trained at OUSD. There's organizations. There's one called SEEDS Community Resolution Center that does RJ training. There's Restorative Justice for Oakland Youth that they're doing a training next week, 2-day training, Introduction to RJ. There is an organization in the Bay Area called CircleUpEd.org, CircleUpEd.org, and they do RJ training as well. And there's other folks that do trainings. The Bay Area is a bit of a hotbed for RJ, so if you type it in, you'll find it. But those three organizations I know do trainings regularly, RJ trainings, and they're ramping up their spring trainings.
I'm sorry, the first one again, you said SEEDS?
It's SEEDS Community, so www.seedscrc.org. I started their RJ program. That's where I worked before I came here to OUSD.
And you've noticed the two camera persons in the background. Marcus back there has been live streaming the conversations, the presentations, so we will post that immediately to our YouTube channel. So if you want to go back, revisit some of the discussion, you'll be able to do that immediately. And Jenny Chu is recording the sessions, and we are going to edit some of the conversations to really get to the heart of the meat of some of the conversations that address the question of what is restorative justice and how is it implemented. And I'll probably be approaching a few of you just to get some feedback from you, perhaps even on camera, about where you're at with restorative justice discipline, and what your thoughts are, and what you feel the need is around that. So with that, I think we're gonna bring things to a wrap. However, definitely would love to hear back from any of you if you have some thoughts that you'd like to share with the group or with our coordinators. And before I do that, I definitely want to thank my colleagues, Smita Patel, who is, I could not have completed this work without. Tiffany, who has been doing an excellent job, Tiffany Liu, doing the tweeting, and Jean and Sue, as I've mentioned. And it all goes without saying, Louis Friedberg, our executive director, who really saw a need for this work and for educators to really have a voice in all of this, the policy and the reforms around school discipline.
Well, and thanks to Lenita for really organizing all of this. Thank you all.
Yes, thank everybody. Thank you, everyone.